it's not. And Sunil says we have rapid withdrawal plans on the plate, which I know there are so many there. Tariq says one of the reasons we're there is to prevent nuclear arms from falling into extremist hands. So what next? Rapid withdrawal, the Swat Valley is in the hands of the Taliban, 10% of Zadari is falling apart. So what next?
First of all, I think the world owes the Afghan people something. And so if you're going to do this analysis, you have to start from whose interest you do the analysis. So if you want to do it from a narrow Canadian point of view, maybe it's just get the hell out. But I personally think we should start our analysis from what's good for the Afghan people. And we owe them something. The West sucked the Russians in order to fight this Cold War and didn't give a damn what happened, how many Afghan lives paid the price for this policy that Brzezinski is so proud of. And the years of destruction and civil war that followed. I don't think the West can just walk away. And I don't think after all the promises made to Afghan women by Bush and others and the Canadians, oh, we're there for the Afghan women. They don't give a damn about the Afghan women. But to walk away and hand Afghanistan, put Afghanistan back into the situation of terrible civil war and the rule of fanatical Taliban or fanatical jihadists, and that's kind of the choice at the moment. When I was there in the spring of 2002, talking about what capital was possible other than just reconstruction capital that was supposed to be pledged by the Western countries. And let's not forget, after the beginning of the Afghan invasion, Bush talked about a kind of Marshall Plan for Afghanistan. And then that was the last time anyone heard those words. But when I was there, the hotels in Kabul were filled with Afghans from Europe, from Canada, from the United States, with suitcases full of cash, ready to open small businesses. There was such an enthusiasm to rebuild Afghanistan, and there was plenty of expertise coming from Afghans who had been schooled in the West, plenty of money, and slowly, because the U.S. would not implement a policy of reconstruction and then defensive reconstruction, the situation continued to unravel. There's an interesting story I heard from the Asia Times journalist there, that apparently in a few months after the U.S. and NATO invasion of Afghanistan, there was a Loya Jirga, these councils of elders met across Afghanistan. And apparently they had a decision where they told the Taliban, either lay down your arms or get out of our villages. And they told them to go, if they want to go to Pakistan. We're ready for reconstruction. We want schools and healthcare and all the rest. And then apparently about 8-9 months ago, there was another whole set of lawyer jirgas, and they said, okay, this has all been bull. This is actually occupation, and they invited the Taliban back in again. But during that time, when President Obama says, we missed fighting the right war after 9/11 by going to Iraq, and this issue of can we win. When I was there in 2002, there wasn't a war to win. There wasn't an enemy really to fight. The Taliban had dispersed in the hills. In fact, the only real danger was letting these warlord criminals back into power. There was a situation there so ripe just for what had been promised. Reconstruction and then some defensive reconstruction would have been necessary. But the Taliban were almost inactive. And none of that happened. And the problem today is Obama still using the same language. Like, let's pick up the war that we should have fought back then and let's fight it now. Now the situation is far worse now and it's far more unraveled. But I don't think the situation is any different. There's no quote-unquote straight military win to be had here. There's no military solution to be had here. But the Afghan people, especially the urban Afghans, they are as much passionately desire reconstruction as they ever did. It's still there to be done.
You know, if I could pick up on what Paul is saying, and a slightly modified version could be to really talk about representative governments in both Afghanistan and Pakistan. In both those places, although in Pakistan it's supposed to be a democracy, but really it's not very different than the military government that it has replaced, because it still relies on the same laws that the military government established. In Afghanistan, you don't have even that element of a facade of democracy. So I do think that that's the place to start. The military needs to withdraw, but support needs to be given. Now, of course, the point is if the military withdraws, the Taliban will overrun it. The point is if they don't overrun it now, they'll overrun it 10 years down the road when the military withdraws eventually. Because military is the raison d'etre for the Taliban. So I really think this is, the situation as far as the Afghans are concerned, they are between a rock and a hard place. And they have to make that hard choice. They have to, if the military presence, the American and other NATO forces there are really doing more harm than good. I don't think their presence is going to resolve. Even if they go towards reconstruction, that's not going to be perceived as something that this military is trying to do, because it's counter to the logic of militarization, and that's what Afghanistan has become. So I really think the first place to begin in terms of to answer your question about what next is really to get some kind of representation at the center. Begin with state building rather than and of course Taliban have to be dealt with. For instance, in Pakistan, more recently, there is Sharia that will supposedly be enforced in Swat and in Malakand and other areas. There is a lot of opposition to it. I'm not here to defend Sharia, but I do think that this may not be a bad strategy as far as the state in Pakistan is concerned, because what they will do is to cancel out this option. Let's say Sharia is enforced. I know it won't last for too long, because eventually it will crumble. The Taliban won't be happy because the state says they will intervene. They won't allow Sharia to be enforced in the way the Taliban want it done. Eventually there will be conflict, and then the state will be back at square one. But having done that, they can then say, well, we tried, it's not working, so I guess we will have to deal with the Taliban militarily. Now, if the Pakistani state deals with the Taliban militarily, that's a different question altogether, as opposed to a foreign occupying army trying to deal with the same question. So I do think that's the direction things need to go if we really want to see the resolution of the problem in Afghanistan and in northern Pakistan.
Donate today and receive a new documentary film available to members of the Real News Network. The History of the National Security State with legendary author Gore Vidal. Bonus features of the DVD include an in-depth response to Vidal from ex-CIA analyst Ray McGovern, who served under 7 U.S. presidents, an exclusive interview with Colin Powell's former Chief of Staff Larry Wilkerson, and an insightful interview with oil policy analyst Antonia Juhas.
The news magazine of the screen. Living glimpses of history in the making.
Hollywood and Washington is a symbiotic relationship. They both deal with illusions. Reality doesn't often play much of a part. I think I saw through the myth of the Cold War almost from the beginning. I was a Washington political kid from a political family. Roosevelt first had radio because he had this great speaking voice and everyone liked to hear. Truman proceeded to break every arrangement that Roosevelt had set up for a peaceful coexistence. And Truman thought that it would be a good idea, why not just stay armed all the time? And then he devised the national security state. You've got to go up and swear allegiance to the United States or else you're a commie. I mean, we had imported fascism. We get Dwight Eisenhower, who said that we have this great military industrial complex. It is a dangerous thing. And he said this is going to change everything. And the way our country's governed is going to change us politically. Along comes Jack Kennedy, who wanted to make his mark, believed in the Cold War. But he said in this kind of politics, it is the appearance of things that matters. I think everybody should take a sober look at the world about us. The national security state still exists. Only it isn't communism anymore, it's terrorism. This is the most serious thing that has happened in the history of the United States. Knowledge is power. We need an honest news system.
We need the real news.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Make a tax-deductible donation now of at least $10 a month or a one-time give of at least $75. As a thank you for your support, we will send you the new documentary film, The History of the National Security State.